Good afternoon and welcome to the second of Sustainable Macleod's Queensland Fruit Fly workshops. We're very fortunate to have Angelo Eliades presenting our workshop today. I'd first of all like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Wurundjeri, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Sustainable Macleod has a very conscious, deliberate, ongoing program to combat Queensland fruit fly. We're determining various strategies. We're collecting data to track Queensland fruit fly and Banyule, and we're also educating ourselves and backyard fruit growers in the best ways to deal with Queensland fruit fly. I want to thank Banyule City Council for the grant which has made this workshop possible, along with a lot of other measures that we're going to be taking. Now to Angelo, who I know you're all waiting impatiently for. Many will know him through Bulleen Art and Garden and also his website, Deep Green Permaculture. Angelo's a presenter, he's a trainer, and he's also a writer. He has a column in the Good Organic Gardening magazine. He's the backyard permaculture writer for that magazine. Angelo's specialty is in designing and building urban food forests, those highly intensive food production systems, and showing people how to do it for themselves. Angelo's created a remarkable and highly productive food garden at his own house in a very small space. Angelo is a true urban agriculture pioneer. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Angelo. Thanks.
Okay, so let's get started. So Queensland fruit fly is it's a native fruit fly. It's from the north. It's native to East Queensland and northeastern New South Wales. And it's essentially migrated its way down through just the admission of infected fruit, essentially, that have come through. But the other thing that's happened is a climate change effect. If you look on, I believe it was the CSIRO website, which I've got this amazing article which documents all the things I want to be talking about on my website. So if you just put Deep Green Permaculture QFF for Queensland Fruit Fly, it will come up. And it's an amazing map that I got off the I think it was the CSIRO website, where it shows that they overlay the climate change over the decades as the temperature increases moving southwards. And it coincides exactly with the migration of fruit fly downwards as well. The bad thing about fruit fly is, unlike citrus gore wasp, which is also one of our Queensland sort of natives that has come down, that came on the back of a truck, literally, from people growing citrus in the northern states, and then because they grow there quicker, and then shipping them by truck, and they carried them down because they only fly short distances. Unfortunately, Queensland fruit fly has the capacity to travel quite far. You can travel several hundred meters, and over time, several hundred meters at a time, and literally over time, it can actually cover many kilometers, and that's how it works its way through suburbs, from one suburb through to another, which is a bit unfortunate in terms of the backyard gardens that encounter it. So it's capable of spreading on its own very easily. So irrespective of all the infected crops that might have been brought down, or the other thing that's really bad, I remember an early outbreak way back about, it must have been, goodness, almost 2 years ago, where we had a starry-eyed young couple who came into the nursery looking for Queensland fruit fly controls. And we said, but it's not down here yet. And they go, oh, but it is in our property. I go, what the hell have you guys done? And they said they went to a farm and they got a tree from a friend, and the tree was potted in soil. So basically they brought the pupating larvae. At that point, we had Department of Produce Industries cordoned off their place in Clifton Hill, and they were essentially a biosecure site sort of thing that was being quarantined. But it's got out of control now, and they've just left it to the individuals to control this. So it's up to essentially community now to control this problem. The reason why it's urgently needs to be controlled by the community is because Queensland fruit fly literally attacks every single fruiting plant. And I will go through those in a second. Now, the problem is that Queensland fruit fly can, if left to its own devices, will inflict crop damages of up to 80%. So pretty well 80% of whatever crop you're growing will be gone once they get through it. Now, one of the other things that's happened with the insurge of Queensland fruit fly is that a lot of people are very fruit fly aware, but what they don't realise is Australia has hundreds of species of native fruit flies, and not all of them are Queensland fruit fly, and not all of them are pests. There's a lot of fruit flies, only a tiny portion of them are pests, and only one of them is Queensland fruit fly. It has a very particular look or appearance. The people, unfortunately, who are already infected by them, you probably already know what they look like. They're about basically 6 to 8 inches long. Sorry, let me say that again. I'm used to running international websites and looking inches. It's 6 to 8 millimeters. They're 6 to 8 millimeters long. They're quite tiny, and they have big, visible red eyes and very, very short antennae. And their back has 2 yellow patches on the sides and two on the back. They're very distinct. So their thorax, their midsection, it's reddish brown in color, and the yellow patches on the sides and on the very back are very distinct. If the fruit flies that you're catching in your traps don't have those yellow patches, they're probably just some of the other native fruit flies. So don't freak out if you end up trapping a whole stack of them and you fill the trap and you think, oh, have I got that much fruit flies? You're going to have to examine them closely, their backs and sides, to make sure that if they have the yellow patches, if they have their fruit flies. If they don't, the other kinds of fruit flies, which are native and most likely not pests at all. We don't have Mediterranean fruit fly here. They're in WA. Most of the states except Tassie and one other one have Queensland fruit fly, so it's gone right through the place. Now, the other thing with the Queensland fruit fly, they're sort of like a dark brown colour. Their legs are a lighter brown and their wings are clear. They have no markings or mottle patches or dark lines through them at all. So if they need to have clear, the easiest way to remember it, big red eyes, clear wings, and 4 sets of yellow patches on their back. If you see that, you have a fruit fly and you have a problem. Now, I mentioned that they do attack virtually every fruiting plant / tree available, subtropical, tropical, temperate, you name it. Essentially anything that flowers and ends up fruiting. So that includes things like veggies, like tomatoes, eggplants, cucumbers, chilies, regular apples like, regular fruit like apples, pears, citrus, weird and wonderful, strange things like prickly pear fruit even. They even crazy exotic things like the berries of cocoa plants, which we can't grow here anyway. They'll even attack fresh dates, which we can't grow here. So anything literally, there's only 3 plants that they don't attack. So you can pretty well say it's everything except these 3 plants. Although there are some little qualifiers here. Actually, there's a little bit more than 3. So chocos, everyone knows that our community garden, Choco Vines run rampant. They are not attacked by Queensland fruit fly. So you can leave your chocos hanging in the vines and they're safe from attack. The berries of coffee plants, which are little red berries, they do actually produce here in Melbourne, and I've seen them fruiting on the benches at Bulleen Art and Garden Nursery. They won't attack dried dates, but they will attack lots of other dried fruit or fruit in storage. They won't attack dragon fruit or monstera fruit, also called fruit salad plant. If you've ever seen a monstera, the indoor plants, they actually do fruit and produce a fruit. There's a little bit of preparation you have to go to get all these irritant little hair things out of them, but they are edible, and pineapples. So essentially choco, coffee beans or coffee berries, dried dates, dragon fruit, monstera, and pineapple. They're the only things they won't attack. Everything else is fair game. Now, that said, they do have a preference. Remember, they essentially are a Queensland native fruit fly. And tomatoes and eggplants and veggies do not grow in Queensland forests. So what they have a preference for is soft fruit. So peaches and nectarines and apricots, anything with very soft flesh, they can get into very easily because they have females have a stinger and they can sting into the fruit. And it's called the ovipositor, their little sting. Now, the ovipositor is not very strong, so they normally can only get into very, very soft fruit. So you're probably asking yourself, how do they get into tomatoes and things? Plants like tomatoes, which have a very tight, firm flesh, they cannot get through at all. And this will surprise you. The only reason why they can lay into those is because they look for damage from other insects. It could be anything like snail damage, aphid damage, earwig damage, any other kind of damage, any kind of mechanical damage, i.e. something's brushed against them, something's hit the fruit, hail damage, frost damage, any other physical damage will give them a weak point to get in. Normally, the skin of a lot of fruit is far too taut and tight for them to be able to lay eggs into. So their preference, first and foremost, and the things you're going to have to protect the most are all your soft fruits. So if you've got anything that's soft and squishy like a peach or a nectarine or an apricot, that's going to be their first preference. That's what they're going to go for first. The rest of the plants are sort of like a second preference. Now, I mentioned that the females do lay their eggs into the fruit. There is a Queensland fruit fly life cycle that we need to be aware of. The timing is important because it gives us an idea of how long we've got to deal with these issues when they arrive. Now, there's 4 distinct stages. There's the egg stage. What the female will do, she'll either find a soft fruit or find a fruit with mechanical damage. She'll put her ovipositor in. This is if she's already fertile, and she will sting into the fruit and lay 6 to 12 eggs just below the surface. Those eggs, essentially, they're tiny. They're only about a millimetre long. They're little banana-shaped fruit. You really won't see them, and you barely see any visible damage on the outside of the fruit. If anything, you might see a little dimple or a little puncture mark, like a pinprick puncture mark with a little bit of oozing sap, but nothing more. They're very, very hard to see. The giveaway on tomatoes is that the puncture sites remain green while tomato ripens up and changes colour. So if you see a tomato usually with that's ripening up with little green spots, good chance there's Queensland fruit fly inside. Now, what I could also mention is that usually if a fruit's been infected, you initially will not see any of the damage because the damage is all on the inside rather than the outside. Now, the eggs will hatch after 2 to 4 days, depending on the temperature. So they don't really take that long at all. After 2 to 4 days, little creamy yellow maggots emerge, and they're carrot-shaped. They got a pointy end and they got a fatter end. Their pointy end is where their head is. And if you ever cut a fruit open, it'll be all mush inside. But if you also see a little caterpillar, little maggot, I should say, that curls into a U shape, it'll bend into a U shape and then spring off. That is a Queensland fruit fly, because a lot of people sometimes find other little maggots and things inside, or caterpillars inside their fruit. They're not too sure. The Queensland fruit fly maggots can jump. They bend into a U shape like a spring and they launch. So if you put them in a jar, you'll see them launch. That's their self-preservation sort of maneuver. When if a bird was to, say, cut open a fruit and potentially eat them, they will just dive out into the soil. That's how they save themselves, and they basically get a second chance at life. Now, once they're in the fruit, they will eat towards the center of it, towards the middle of it. And as they do that, because they carry bacteria, the bacteria that carry will be released into the fruit. The bacteria will start breaking down and rotting the fruit. So it will distinctly look rotten and turn into mush or pulp on the inside, or it can be really brown. And what will happen then is then they will feed off the bacteria-digested material. They can't eat the fruit matter directly, the maggots. So they use the bacteria to literally pre-digest inside of the fruit, and then they will eat that. That will provide them with the nutrients that they need. Because they've infected the inside of the fruit will drop prematurely. It will fall to the ground. Once it falls to the ground, they will then eat out of the fruit and burrow into the ground, ready to pupate. Now, the maggots are about 8 to 11 millimeters long. They're a bit longer than the actual adult fruit flies, and they're very distinct looking. They've got little carrot-shaped, little tuber type things. They're cream-colored. They bend and they jump, and they have little jaws, like jaws, which they use to cut through the fruit. Now, okay, so once the maggot's inside the fruit, it takes about 2 to 6 weeks for it to mature. So once it hatches after 2 to 4 days, it'll take essentially 2 to 6 weeks, which is quite a while for the maggot to reach its maximum size. And then it will then be ready to burrow into the soil. Usually the fruit has fallen down by then. If you cut the fruit open, you will see the maggots all squirming inside. There'll be quite a few of them, and they're very, very active. They're very quick wrigglers, and they will wriggle across quite fast. They're very evasive as well. And the fruit will just look, it's unmistakable. It look absolutely disgusting. So it look like it's decomposing, because it actually is. Now, once they've gone into the ground, they will pupate. So what they do is they form a little shell around them. The pupa is only 4 to 5 millimeters. So it's smaller again than the adult, and smaller again than the caterpillar. So it's literally like a rice grain in size, and they're little brown or tan barrel shapes. And they will sit inside of those for about 2 to 6 weeks, again, depending on the weather, how warm it is, which climate you're in. And then eventually they will re-emerge. Now, the problem with the Queensland fruit fly larvae, if you put infected fruit into a compost bin, they will incubate in there, and they will then be able to emerge as adults out of your compost bin. So you can't put fruit straight into your compost. Okay, so the fourth stage is the adult stage. So when the weather warms up enough, the adults, both males and females, will burrow out of the ground from their underground shells where they're protected, and they will come up, and they're ready then to live their lives as an adult. They only live for a few months, and like most insects, or like most flies, I should say, they will need food, i.e. sugars. So what they will do is they will search for a sugar source. They have several sugar sources. Just like beneficial insects, they can eat nectar out of flowers. They also will eat honeydew from aphids. So if you've got an aphid or scale problem and they're exuding honeydew, that's going to feed your Queensland fruit fly. So if you have problems, ongoing problems with aphids and scale, like on your citrus, for example, then it might be a good idea to spray them late winter with something like eco oil, a horticultural oil, to suffocate any dormant pests or any eggs that are there, because that will just eliminate one more source of food for the Queensland fruit flies. Whitefly also do the same thing. So if you spray like late winter with eco oil, because you can't spray horticultural oils when the temperatures are really hot as well. And the idea is in traditional European gardening, they would use what they call dormant oils, where they would use something like a synthetic petroleum distillate, usually like a refined paraffin oil, as a dormant oil, and they're really bad and heavy. So the more modern equivalent is like Pest oil or white oil. Eco oil is far better because it won't damage your soil, because if you just pouring paraffin oil into your soil, it'll sit there for many, many years. I think the estimated life was about 8 years or something. So it'll just clog up your soil and plant roots. That's not really good. But make sure you get rid of any whitefly, aphids, or scale that might be dormant. So a good dormant spray on your fruit trees might be worthwhile. If you were to spray your deciduous fruit trees, on the other hand, with something like lime sulfur is not only a fungicide, which is necessary for peaches and nectarines. So you're killing two birds with one stone here, and usually necessary on your apricots and also grapes. It will also kill any dormant pests, whether they're eggs or anything pupating under the bark or adults. So lime sulfur will kill them off. So what we're doing at this point is denying the adults as much of their sugar sources as possible. Now, the female Queensland fruit fly also has an additional need before she can mate, before she can, become sexually mature to mate, she needs to eat protein. Now, this next bit is a little bit disgusting. They get their protein sources either from bacteria off leaves, which you get a lot of when you have really warm, humid conditions. And some of the springs that we've been having where we get sudden 35-degree days and rain really encourages that. But they also eat animal feces, droppings, anything from chook poo, dog poo, things like that. If they find it, they will feed off that. So if you have pets, cats bury their own when they go to the toilet, but chickens and dogs will leave it on the surface. The best thing you can do with any chook poo is clean it regularly and open your compost up, throw it in the middle of it, close it. That'll work as a compost activator and get your compost started up really quickly, and it'll deny them that source. If you've got pet dogs, make sure you clean regularly, not only for that reason of Queensland fruit fly, but there's a lot of other parasites that they can carry, which can infect little children who might touch the grass, or if it dries and blows in the wind. So make sure any animal droppings are well controlled. They'll also eat juices of fruits to get protein source, because even though you might think that fruit might not have much protein, it has enough in there for them to actually be able to sexually mature, then breed. So any fallen fruit even will provide them with a source of juice. So make sure there's no fallen fruit as well. So these are just controls that we're using, which we'll talk about when we go into IPM controls. They're cultural controls where you're just changing the environment to make it less hospitable and less encouraging for them. So that's really, really important. So before we've even started anything, we can do those things knowing how they behave. Now, the adults can also overwinter. What they do is they find sheltered locations and they hide in those, and they will survive a winter if the winter's fairly mild. I know they live a few months. It's hard to say exactly how many months they will survive, but if enough males and females survive from overwintering, even if you've got no new infections, they'll possibly rebreed, and then they'll carry on the cycle yet again. Now, they look for sheltered locations. When the weather warms up, they become active, and and after you get periods of rain or high humidity, so warmth, and remember these things are tropical, subtropical. So as soon as the weather warms up, and especially after rain or high humidity, they will become active, and you'll see them flying around, which means that you'll start seeing them in your traps if you do trap them. Now, there's several ways that we can control them. The best way is to combine methods together using what we call integrated pest management, because no one method is 100% successful, but you can combine many methods to increase the success. And there's a few interesting attributes about Queensland fruit flies which make it a little bit easier to discourage them, which actually work in our favour, which I'll be discussing in a second. Now, the first controls that we're going to talk about are cultural controls. That's where we disrupt the environment that the pest favours. So we reduce pest establishment, we minimise their chances of breeding and surviving. So what we're doing is we're going to first change their environment to make it as inhospitable for them as possible and as unfavourable as possible. That will minimise their chances off the bat for a start. So the first thing, any fallen fruit, we need to pick that up. We need to get rid of it. Now, a lot of people talk about how we get rid of infected fruit. There's several ways. One way is to solarize it, assuming we get enough heat. You put it in a black plastic bag, you tie it shut, and you leave it in the sun for a few days. That's how you would do that. Solarizing is a little bit more effective than what most people will think. I've measured the temperature against a brick wall on a 14-degree midday sun exposure position with a laser thermometer, and it was about 40 degrees. So even when it's fairly cold, something left in the sun against a warm surface like a brick a dark coloured brick wall, dark coloured metal fence, for example, or concrete or dark paving or asphalt will heat up quite significantly and considerably. Now, after you've solarized it, I would not recommend trying to rescue the fruit and putting it in a worm farm or in the compost. If you consider, if you dry it, it will dry to 1/10 of its mass. So a kilo of fruit is only going to give you 100 grams of dry matter. So it's not really worth rescuing. You'd be better off double bagging it if there's a risk that it's going to get torn in the bin and putting it in your landfill waste, not your recycle green waste recycle bin. The other thing you can do, which I think is a little bit messy, you can put the fruit in a container, put something to weigh it down and keep it underwater and leave it there for several days submerged. And apparently they will all drown eventually. You will have a bit of a mess to deal with, personally, I think. It would be hard to get rid of that. I'm not sure how you would actually dispose of that. People go as far as even microwaving their fruit when it's in small amounts, when it's fresh, but I would not be doing that. If you had a spare microwave, maybe, and know that you're going to bin, but I would not do that. The easiest is to just bag. If you can't even solarize your fruit, you just double bag it and put it in the bin and get rid of it that way. Now, there's also physical controls. Physical controls just block the pests out. They essentially, the physical controls can either work as barriers or they can work as traps. Barriers will keep pests out. Traps will capture the pests and potentially catch them alive or catch them dead, kill them essentially. Now, there's quite a few physical controls that we can use. Now, one of the most interesting things that I read was some research from Macquarie University, and what they were doing is experimenting with various fruit fly controls. And what they did is set up some attractants for some males, and they put those essentially behind a kind of windbreak, which has a 4 millimeter by 6 millimeter hole, which is quite big. You can almost push a pencil through that. It's way big for a Queensland fruit fly to fit through. So it's not actually a physical barrier. It's just a windbreak netting. The holes are big enough for them to crawl through. Only the traps that were right up against the netting got the males inside. None of the plants that were protected with just the wind net were actually affected by fruit fly. What they found is that Queensland fruit fly was attracted to yellow, bright yellow, and they were repelled by white. You think, why would they be repelled by white? Well, think of their environment. They exist amongst trees in protected sort of shaded spots in tropical and subtropical forests. So in those areas, they will be hiding in the dark areas. They obviously then get picked off by other predators, be they birds or other insects, and they would be under the cover of dark there, or reasonable shade, so they're not that visible. You will not see bright white things in the middle of a tropical forest or subtropical forest. So for them, they see bright white and they think that's unnatural and they avoid it. So they found that they were just avoiding the netting, even though they can fit through the holes, purely because of the color. It was repellent to them. Now, that said, the good thing about the new laws that have passed, you're probably all familiar with them. In Victoria now, it's illegal to have any kind of protective netting that you can fit your pinky through, your little finger. So that now has necessitated that most of the netting sold is a very fine mesh. And most of the netting that's sold currently is 2 millimeter insect exclusion netting. Now, 2 millimeter exclusion netting is small enough to keep Queensland fruit fly out completely. But if it's over a tree or around a tree, it's also repellent in color. Now, you do not have to wrap a whole tree in insect netting. There are various approaches. You can go around a tree sideways. You don't have to go up and over. You can also get form-fitted, essentially fitted netting systems that look like an inverted glass. Imagine a glass that's upside down with a slit down the side. The ones that are sold for about $30, they're, if I remember, they're 3 meters high, 2.5 meters wide, or 2.4 meters wide, and they just sit over a fruit tree. So they work really, really well. Now, with those, the important thing is, and I'll talk about it in a sec, fruit tree size. It's best to keep your fruit trees pruned smaller so they're more manageable. They're easier to net, harvest, and also control pests. So you can get a fitted net that goes over. You can wrap your nets around and then tie them towards a center trunk if you've got a central leader tree, or if you have a more of a vase-shaped tree, you can get sleeves, which are 30 by 90 sleeves, which slip over the drawstring, and you can tie them on either end to cover a whole branch. Now, what I tend to use a lot of, and I've got my show and tell props here, are these insect exclusion netting bags. You can see it's a 30 by 30 centimeter drawstring bag. There's a drawstring. I can just pull that shut and then tie a shoelace knot and tie it. And I can keep my fruit in that bag protected. Even if there's a little gap, they most likely won't get in. These bags, you can get them for about $7 for 10 of them, and these last for many, many years. As soon as the crop's done, you untie them, put them onto the next crop that's ripening up, if you've got things that crop throughout the season. These are very durable. They'll keep birds out. They'll keep possums out. The only things that get through these are rats and mice. So if your fruit tree, your fruit bags made out of insect exclusion netting have got a hole, so a small hole, you've got a rat, baby rat or mouse problem. If you've got big holes, you have a rat problem. If you see possums or birds hacking out a hole in the net, it's been made by a rat or a mouse, and they're just getting into it. So just remember, insect exclusion bags, these are very, very good. They do an excellent job. With those nets, as I said, you don't have to wrap the whole tree. If you do want to cover your whole tree, the most important thing is to keep your tree as small as possible. If your tree is very large, you're going to have difficulty harvesting the fruit. You're going to have difficulty covering the fruit, and a lot of the fruit is only going to be available to birds and possums anyway. And it will just become an attractant to Queensland fruit fly. So what I recommend is summer pruning your fruit trees to keep them small. Keep them no higher than what you can reach your hand above your head height when you're on your tiptoes. You don't want to be ladder climbing, covering fruit trees. That's not very good an idea, especially when people get older, because balance and falls and things can be, balance becomes an issue, and falls take a very long time to heal. So I do not recommend that. Now, with the netting, you can, if you time it properly, you can have a small amount of netting, and as things crop month after month, you can move from one tree to another. So you don't have to do everything all at once. Now, it's really important, though, to mention that Queensland fruit fly can get into fruit when they're just marble size, size of a cool mint, for example. So it's important to net them early, but we can combine the netting with other measures as well. Now, next, I want to talk about traps. So with traps, they're designed to capture pests, either for monitoring them to determine how much of them you have, or to eradicate them, to get rid of them. Now, I will talk about a common trap, which people see, but it's a very bad trap because it's not a control trap, it's a monitoring trap. Next prop, yellow sticky traps. These things, these are essentially a piece of cardboard folded in half with a yellow twist tie, and if you open them up, they're covered in glue and there's a grid. The reason why they have a grid on them, they're made for monitoring. What they do is to figure out, you put them every X number of square meters. This is when you're monitoring pests in a agricultural control situation. And because they're yellow, they will attract the Queensland fruit fly. They'll also attract aphids, whitefly, and a lot of other things, and they will stick them. And that's to determine whether you have a pest problem or not. They're not a very good, for whatever they catch, they will kill, but they're not essentially a control. They're a monitoring trap. That said, there are other traps which will attract Queensland fruit flies, and they will either poison them or drown them. Now, one of the classic ones is, I'll show you, here's the box. This is a Cera trap, C-E-R-A trap. Now, these are about $35. The refills are cheap. Most of it's the plastic bottle. I'll show you what you get inside a Cera trap. You get a big, huge jar of this attractant. You get this lid. You open it, peel off the seal, screw this on top. So this has little holes at the sides to let the Queensland fruit fly in, and it has a hole at the top which you put this cable tie that comes with it, and you hang it on the branch. Now, these things are refillable. The other thing you can do is you can make your own lure if you want. I'll also talk about making your own ones of these in a second. Now, these are essentially a combination of protein and sugar. Because remember what the females require. The males require sugars to stay alive. The females require the sugars as well to stay alive because they're just like the males, but they also need the proteins to reach sexual maturity so they can mate. So that will attract both of them. They will go in and they will drown. The liquid lasts for about 3 to 4 months, and then you have to replace it. If it starts filling with fruit flies, what you're meant to do is get something like a coffee filter, make a little cone, pour the stuff through. So you've got all the dead flies in the coffee filter, and you pour it into a container. Then you decant it, pour it back in, so you don't leave the dead flies all piling up in there, because I think it'll probably make it less attractive to them. The refills, I think about $15 if I'm not mistaken. With those bait traps, the Department of Pro Industries, I think it was New South Wales, I think it's the Victorian one, has instructions on how to make one. Essentially what they say is take a soft drink bottle, about 10 centimeters down from the lid, make 4 10-cent piece size holes, and you fill it with orange juice with pulp in it, and you just let it, it doesn't matter about it going off because it's supposed to go off. You pour it in. I think you fill it about 1/3 if I'm not mistaken, and you put in a little bit of I think it's a teaspoon of cloud ammonia. I will put up the instructions up on my website this in the next day or two on how to make one of those. That will work fairly similarly, or they use a little bit of wheelie bin cleaner as well. The cloud ammonia is a lot cheaper. You can buy a whole big bottle of cloud ammonia from the supermarket. Probably it's about a litre for around about $2.50 or thereabouts. So a little goes a long way. You just get the cheapest, nastiest orange juice, which has got pulp in it, that will work to attract them. The problem with having big holes like that, a lot of other insects can get in. Even with the Cera trap, the holes are literally probably, I can't get the tip of my finger in, but we can see the hole there. That's probably, I reckon, about 1 centimetre wide. I found out that Queensland fruit flies should be able to squeeze through a 4mm hole. So if you're making your own, I would put a series of 4mm holes in because it'll keep other things out. One thing I discovered when we first experimented with the Cera traps at Blaine Art and Garden, well before any fruit fly were there, they filled up with the European wasps. It's a great way to control wasps, but the whole thing will fill up with wasps. So if you want to keep them out, keep the holes small. And you also won't have a wasp problem then in your garden. Now, the Cera trap, even though the Queensland fruit fly hide on the shady sides of the trees, you put the Cera trap on the north side where it's bright and sunny, if I remember the instructions correctly. I'm looking at it here. Okay, so they're suggesting that you hang these up before fruit flies start attacking. So you put them up essentially late winter, very early spring, just before they start emerging. and ideally when the fruit are small and still developing. So if the fruit's around marble size, they reckon put them out. But what the instructions are saying, if the fruit is 1/3 of its maximum size, then put them out. But ideally, you want them out well before then, because you can't go by fruit size because the seasons fluctuate and things are all over the place climate change wise. So I would say as soon as the weather starts warming up, I would put them, like citrus gall wasp traps, better to have them up a week early. So at the very least, if we don't have a really warm August, mid to late August would be a great time to put them up. And, because they're not going to lose that much from evaporation, because there's not much time, there's not much heat for them and not much time for them to evaporate anyway. So you're not going to lose anything by putting them a bit early. You put them a bit late, then you will be in trouble because they'll be attacking your fruit instead. Okay, so now they recommend putting the traps up very close to fruit trees that are most vulnerable. As I said, northern side of the tree, about 1.5 meters above the ground within the canopy, because they normally tend to hide up in the canopy. With short fruit trees, they might be a bit lower, but with a big tree, it's going to be roughly eye level. Now, that is a bait trap that I just discussed, because that offers them something to eat. Being an old fisherman, we used to have baits and we used to have lures. Baits are things that you, like a pilchard or a worm, something that you give the thing that you want to catch to eat. A lure would be something like a little rubbery little thing with a hook in it, or a little fake fish thing. It's not real, but it attracts them anyway. And what we use as a lure is a pheromone trap for the males. Now, there are 2 types of pheromone traps for the males, and one works with a liquid which drowns them. The other one works with a poison, with malathion or maldacin, as they call it, with a wick. The Echo lure looks like a little UFO. I don't have one of those. It's about so big, and it essentially looks like a yellow-lidded little UFO shape. And inside, it has a little wick, and the wicks are replaceable. All the little plastic cover does is protect the wick from rain and stops other insects from getting in there, because the wick is really toxic. The wick also has, there's a pheromone trap bait in there. So what will happen is the males will head towards the pheromone lure because they think there's females there. They will go towards it, they will touch the poisonous wick and they will die. Maldacin or malathion is a terrible organophosphorus insecticide, but because it's contained, it's okay to use in that thing because it's not going anywhere. Just make sure that once it's finished, you put that into a plastic bag and you put that into landfill. Don't do anything else with it. An easier one to use is the Ripened trap, which is, let me get my other props here. Okay, so here we have, this looks like exactly like the Serra trap, but it's not a Serra trap. This is the Ripened Fruit Fly trap, and it has a little disc which you can actually, it either stops them flying up into it, or some people can actually use these to put lures on, but there's a few little holes in there. If you look closely, I'm not sure if you can see, there's 4 holes there. So if you go up, through and around, and you fill this part way, I'll give you the exact dimensions in a second, with a liquid called wild maize liquid attractant. Now, this is essentially a synthetic chemical. It's nothing to do with sugar or protein. This just smells like female Queensland fruit flies. You pour some of that into this trap, you seal it up, you hang this up, but this, unlike the Serra trap, you do not hang this up in the on the northern side. You put it on the eastern side where it's not going to get cooked by sun and where it's a little bit more shady where they all hang around. It's got a little twist tie, which you can just pull out and you tie to a branch. They recommend tying these about 1.2 meters above the ground on the eastern side. 1.2 meters is about 4 feet. Think of it as about probably, chin height perhaps, or chest height, depending on how tall you are. And those wild maize fruit fly attractants will essentially, just like the echo lures, they will attract males from around 400 meters away, so a quarter of a mile. So unlike the serra traps where they recommend having one every few trees, literally, for a backyard, they might recommend something like 6 of them. Now, at $35, or you would not buy 6 of them, but you can actually do 6 orange. You can buy one of those and maybe, 6, do 6 fruit juice drink bottles with the holes at the top hung up with the orange juice and the cloudy ammonia. You need a lot of the ones to catch the males and females as a bait trap. The pheromone trap, because it's a pheromone, it drives them they've got this irresistible urge to mate like most living things. So they will head straight for that, and it's much more effective. So you literally would only need one for your whole block, not your personal property block. I mean, the whole suburban block. I'm talking about from street to street to street to street. So these will go a fair way. So you don't need that many of the male attractant lure traps, but you need a lot more of the bait traps. Now, with the good thing with the wild maize, that does not go off as quickly as the echo lure. I'll give you the amount of time that the echo lure lasts in a second, if I remember it correctly. But the essentially the liquid just evaporates very, very slowly. And once your Riset male fruit fly trap fills with male fruit flies, you will run it through a piece of coffee filter, or just even newspapers, make a cone shape out of it, just fold it and open up so it's all cone shape, pour it through, let it run out. The idea is you don't want all the dead flies sitting in it. And with that one, it will take many, many months for it to evaporate. So what they're saying, the instruction now, if I bring my Riset fruit fly trap, this does not, the liquid, liquid which costs, where was it? I think it must have been about $10, $15 for the liquid. It wasn't that expensive. There's a whole litre of this, 1,000 mil. You only have to put 2 centimeters of the stuff down the bottom. That's all you need. So once you pour, so minimum of 2 centimeters, you can pour a little bit more than that. And essentially they're saying 4 traps per hectare equally spaced. So you don't really need much. The other important thing about these male lures is they're also an alarm. And I'll explain how that works in a second, because these also alert you when the fruit fly have hatched out of the ground. And that's when you can start putting the other traps up as well. Now, you put about 2 centimeters, once the liquid or more, once the liquid gets to about 1.5 centimeters, then you refill them. It does not take very long at all to do that. Now, if I find the echo lures, I will tell you how long those last. Okay, the echo lures, they reckon 1 every 400 square meters, and they last how long exactly? Okay, I'm just going through the instructions. It's hard to remember the instructions for every particular product, so I'm actually having to refer to notes. 3 months. So the echo lures, which look like a little container with a yellow lid on them, a little UFO shape, they only last 3 months, and you can buy new wicks to replace them. I think the wild maize attractant, because the bottles are under $10, I think they're only about $6, and the refill is about $15. They're a much better option. They'll cover a wider area, and you don't need to refill them as often. So that would be my preference for that. Okay, now the other thing we can do with physical controls is create what we call a physical barrier. And there's a simple way to do that. We've all heard about gall wasp and how we can control those with calcine kaolin. Commercially, the product calcine kaolin is sold as surround WP. Surround as in surround go around. WP is in what is it, Whiskey Papa in phonetic. Okay, so Surround WP. At Bully and Art and Garden, you can buy it as this product called Overhaul. You can get it in 2 bag sizes. The 1 kilo is $29.95. You can get half a kilo for $19.95. It is essentially, when you pull it out, just a big bag of white powder. Just don't get caught by the police with this without any labels on it. Okay, it's essentially just it's just essentially a special calcium-containing clay, and it's very, very, very fine. Now, what you do is you put that into a spray bottle and you spray it over the fruit, and it creates a white fuzzy coating over the fruit, and they look unattractive to the insects. They're bright white again, so bright white is repellent to Queensland fruit fly. It will also stop coddling moth on apples. When insects walk on it, it feels a bit weird to them. It feels unnatural. Also, if you spray any of your new green growth on your citrus, that's what the gall wasp attack. Also, any of the young leaves when they're under 2 centimeters in size, if you spray that on your citrus leaves, you'll stop leaf miner as well. It's normally just used to prevent sunburn on fruit. That's its on-label use. That's what farmers use so their fruit doesn't get sunburn. If you ever had fruit and we get the sudden warm weather and you get this sunken brown sort of patch at the top, usually it'll be on the northwest side of the fruit. That's just fruit sunburn. That's what this is sold for, but they discovered it stops insects getting into fruit. So remember how we said we can combine measures? You can spray the fruit when they first emerge, when they're marble size, and cover them with calcined kaolin, with what Bully Art and Garden sells as Overhaul. And then after that, what you can do is put the insect netting bags over them, so it's double protected. So that's not too bad. If you can't net certain things, you can just spray them with the Overhaul initially until the fruit gets too big, then you have to respray it. Now, you don't really need much of it. A little goes a long way, even though they recommend respraying. You can essentially, you put like 25 to 50 grams of it into a litre of water. I've worked out what that is volume-wise. 100 mil, you get a 100 mil cup, or you get a measure like that you use in your kitchen. Put 100 mil of calcined kaolin into half a litre of water and mix that up, or 200 mil of calcined kaolin into a litre of water. You will not need that much. You're only spraying the fruit, remember. So if you get half a kilo bag, you can make literally, 5 batches out of that. And that will give you 2.5 litres of the stuff. Half a litre will go a long way if that's what you're going to use. So there's quite a few controls there. We're not through them all yet. Now, most people think, okay, what about natural biological controls? Most insects have predators that eat them. And if you encourage those, then maybe you can get some contribution from biological controls to reduce Queensland fruit fly. Well, strangely enough, no surprises, there are various predators that will control Queensland fruit fly. Now, there's good news and bad news. So good news is that the eggs are predated on by parasitic wasps. Ants and ground beetles will eat the maggots, and spiders, dragonflies, robber flies, and birds such as swallows, willy wagtails, and restless flycatchers will all eat the adults. The other bird, which is a common domesticated bird, is a chicken. If you run poultry under your chickens under your fruit trees, they will clean up any of the pupae that are dormant in the soil as they scratch away. They will also go through any infected fallen fruit and eat the maggots out of those. Now, just be sure, don't let your chickens scratch under your citrus because they're shallow rooted, and the chickens scratching under those can kill the tree. They can weaken or kill it. Now, bad news with biological controls, if you don't have chickens and you just rely on what's in nature, they do control some, but not enough to make a real difference, unfortunately. So it's good to encourage the beneficial insects, but you can't rely on them. They're only contributing a very minor part. Now, Now we're moving to the big guns, chemical controls. Now, with integrated pest management, we leave chemicals as the last resort. You're probably wondering why. Well, chemicals are the most drastic, most environmentally damaging last resort option, because if you tend to go chemicals first and they don't work, then you're absolutely stuffed, to put it simply, because you've got nowhere else to go. So we can also use chemical controls to control Queensland fruit fly. Now, the simplest and safest chemical control, we've already discussed the echo lure, the little yellow-lidded UFO-shaped thing. Even though that's a lure, because it's got the pheromone bait to attract them, it's technically a trap, but it's essentially a lure trap. It's called echo lure, but it's not a drowning trap. So it's not a physical control. Traps are physical usually. This uses a chemical control, that organophosphorus insecticide, Maldacin or Malathion, which as soon as they touch, they pretty well die in very short order. So you'll find them all usually sitting at the bottom of the container dead. Now, because that trap only attracts males, that's used as part of a strategy of what the scientists or in the Department of Pruning is called MAP, Male Eradication Program. It sounds like a radical feminist plot, but it's not. It's just a strategy to control fruit fly, because if the females don't breed, then they can't lay eggs. If they can't lay eggs, it breaks the reproductive cycle. But there's a catch. You can't just use MAP or male annihilation program. Eradication would be with an E, wouldn't it? Okay, so you can't use just male annihilation plan strategies, because if you put either the echo lure or the wild maize pheromone trap up, you'll get the males. But if one male survives, even one single male, a single male can actually mate with many, many, many females, and they can lay many times over. So they can lay a couple of hundred eggs. So all it takes is one male survivor to basically break all your male annihilation program controls. That is why we don't just use the male controls. We don't just use the pheromone traps, because one male surviving will pretty well undo that whole strategy. So we need the other controls to keep the Queensland fruit flies out of the fruit, i.e. the physical barriers. And we also use some of the trap baits, the Seratrap, the liquid protein sugar baits. We also use an other kind of chemical control, and there's two of them. One's called Echo Natural Lure, and that's by OCP, the guys that do all the Echo Oil and Echo Fungicide. Theirs is called Echo Natural Lure, and there's also the Yates one, which is this little guy here. I'm not sure if you can see that. And I really hate Yates, just joking, because they keep on renaming all their things all the time. And this one's called Nature's Way. What the hell is that? I think it's called, just Nature's Way Fruit Fly Control. Now, these, both of the Echo Natural Lure and the Yates Nature's Way Fruit Fly Control essentially are just a sugar protein mix, again, because that's what will attract both the males. They will attract the females. The sugars in it will attract the males. The sugar and the protein will attract the females. And it just uses spinosad, which is one of those insecticides which were touted to be organic, but they're not really, and they're not really that safe. Spinosad is a toxic metabolite of a soil bacteria, and what they did is artificially synthesize it. And the product spinosad is normally sold as Success. There's also a more synthetic, more toxic version called Success Ultra. Neither of those, they touted to be organic. They're not organic. They're not safe to bees. They're quite toxic. And they also quite toxic, I believe, to earthworms, if I remember correctly. Now, with with either the Eco Natural lure or the Nature's Way, these essentially all you do is you spray this on they recommend either on the trunk of the tree or a piece of plywood or a bit of wood that's 30 by 30, a foot by a foot in size, essentially that big, squirrel by squirrel in size, and just spray it on. They are drawn to it. They'll eat the bait. They'll eat it. They'll become poisoned and they will die. That's how that works. It's a chemical control. Now, the problem with this chemical control is it washes off. If I look at the instructions, because I don't memorize all the instructions, all the products off the top of my head, they're saying, okay, so you're mixing 10 mil into 60 mil of water. And for a non-foliar baiting, so if you spray on a bit of wood, 10 mil into 15 mil of water, so it's going to be quite thick. And how often? I think it lasts for about 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. Now, this is the thing. Okay, so this is the Eco Natural lure. They say spray it in 30 centimeter patches around the foliage of plants. I wouldn't do that. Or you can spray it on a piece of wood and must be applied weekly or after rain. That's not very economical, is it? So you apply it once a week or every time it rains, especially during spring when we get the rain. So what I thought about, a simple way to do this more effectively if you're using these chemical controls, is you've probably all seen the bright yellow, thin, floppy cutting boards that they sell at the supermarket. Yeah, you can get a pack for about $2 or $3. It'll have a red one, a green one, a yellow one, and usually a blue one. And they're only about, say, 1 millimeter thick. They're just almost semi-disposable cutting boards. Get the yellow one. It's more than 30 by 30 centimeters. Punch 2 holes in the top, put a piece of string or a wire, hang that up onto your tree near the trunk, spray that. Now, if you don't want to be replacing that after each time it rains, you can put some kind of a makeshift roof over it, or you can get a piece of plywood, put 2 bits of wood over the top, make it a little makeshift roof again, or make a little cone shape out of a big bit of plastic, hang it up, a bit like they use for the chicken coop feeders or something like that, or those things that are used for possums and rats to stop crossing wires. So you just make it, cut a big disc, slit it, pull it together, and just make sure there's a little bit of a hole on the top, and you can hang it over these things. The idea is you don't want the rain washing all this insecticide off into the soil. So if you're going to use the chemical controls, spray it on something that's going to attract them. A bit of a plywood board is better than foliage or the branches of the tree. Because the thing is, if bees get onto this stuff, it's really toxic to bees. They don't tell you that. They don't like telling you that. But if bees walk on this, and I'm not sure if bees are attracted to it, if you also want it to be a little bit more environmentally safe, what you can do is you can get some gutter guard. You've all seen the rolls of gutter guard. It's for any kind of fine mesh, as long as it's not white. If it's black or yellow or silver, it'll be fine, as long as it'll stop the bigger insects getting through, and that should work really well. You can also take your yellow plastic cheap cutting board from the supermarket, roll it into a big tube, and then put some wire around to hold it together, spray that around, make a little cage out of very fine wire around it, and then put some kind of a little disc over the top as a lid. That will also work. So there's more sustainable ways of using this than doing it that way. So I thoroughly recommend, if you're going to use the chemical controls, go to a little bit of effort to not have it wash into the soil, because they are awfully goddamn expensive as well. I think one of these is probably about $25 or more, and it's only 200 mil. And judging by those application rates, you will be going through a fair bit of it if you were using it the way they recommend, and you had the rain washing it all away. So try to, put it under your evergreen trees as well. If you've got a dense citrus tree, it'll also stop some of the rain falling on it. And ideally, like I said, if you want to keep other insects off it that might be beneficials, put some kind of a mesh over it that they will not be able to get through. Because remember, the Queensland fruit fly, quite small, they will get through a 4 millimeter hole. So if the holes are 4 mil, they can get through. It's not going to be a problem. Now, the question is, when do you implement which controls? I have a sequence here. I've actually got this as a handout, so I'll make it available to Paul, and he'll be able to distribute it to everybody as well. So what you have to do, start of spring. So start of spring is when all the adult Queensland fruit flies emerge when the weather warms up. So the females will be out searching for protein to feed on so they can become sexually mature to mate. So we're just revising here. So at that time, you put all the Queensland fruit fly pheromone traps, both the echo lures and the wild maize ones, to get the males. Why do we do that? Because when you see, you could check your traps regularly. It's best to check them usually daily. If you find males in the pheromone traps, it means that they've emerged. And if you haven't put your Sera traps, these ones, or your homemade protein bait, the orange juice, cloudy ammonia traps out, that's your mark, that's your signal to put them out, because it means they're active, they're hatching, you have to get them out now. So that's really, really important. Okay. Now, the other thing, if you've got your male fruit flies emerging in your traps, you also know that the females are out looking for protein. So that's when you would start spraying your boards or yellow cutting boards, or plywood boards, or whatever it might be, or if you really have to, the tree trunk, with the poison, how do we call these? The chemical, the protein sugar. The nomenclature is absolutely horrible for these things. You will be using the spinosad chemical controls with the sugar and protein in them. So that's when you would spray these as well, because that's when the females are going to be looking for their protein. You can also hang up your Sera traps at that time, like I said, and the Sera traps, you will need more than just one. I would say one every few trees, which is absolutely horrible for someone like me who has 30 fruit trees in a very, very confined space of about 60 square meters. But you would literally need several of them for a backyard. I would think about 5. I have also looked, China sells these little contraptions. It essentially looks like one of these, it looks more like the wild maize lid, like one of these lids, but it screws onto a soft drink bottle. Now, looking at the European reports, a lot of those don't fit onto our water bottles or soft drink bottles. So I've ordered some just to make sure, just to check, because that would be a lot easier than punching holes in. They were about $2 each. I'm hoping to get some in the next few weeks, and once I've checked them out, I'll be able to verify whether they can actually fit onto our soft drink bottles. Otherwise, we can just punch holes into the soft drink bottles. Remember, I said 10 centimeters below the lid, and put the orange juice, half fill it with orange juice, with pulp in it, and put a teaspoon of liquid ammonia, because you need to get your Sera traps, and you need a lot of them out there. One of them will not work on its own. It'll only protect a small space around that tree. They tend to congregate around certain trees and hang around there, and they won't necessarily fly too far if they don't have to. So if you're going to use any of the sugar protein drowning traps that attract both females and males, make sure you get a few of them in. Also, that would be the time to spray. So that would be also a time to get your insect exclusion netting up once the fruit has started forming. So depending, because I can't say exact timing, because some we have, so, well, how do I even say this? Because of climate change, we even have some of our fruit trees are even flowering right now, which is absolutely nuts. They shouldn't be at all. But when the fruit starts forming, you can then spray with your calcine kaolin, call it surround, call it overhaul, whatever you want to call it. Spray with that and or nets. That's when the nets go up as well. So once you've got marble-sized fruit, that's when you start doing that. Now, and as I said, I would be inclined, despite the instructions saying put the male pheromone traps at the start of spring, I would be inclined to put them late winter. Having them a week or 2 weeks before spring is not going to matter. You're not going to evaporate any of your liquid, not losing anything. Okay, most of the controls have to go in spring, unfortunately. Summer, there's a little bit you can do. And what you can do is essentially collect any of the fallen fruit on the ground and be vigilant with that. As soon as you see, do a daily run and every morning get up, walk around your fruit trees, pick up any fruit that's fallen. You either solarize it. Hopefully, if we do get a real summer, you'll be able to solarize things more effectively. And at the very least, double bag them and bin them. If you want to sit there and push it all underwater submerged, it's up to you. I wouldn't recommend that. And the other thing is also, if you have chickens, you can run them under your orchard so they can clean up any fallen fruit themselves and any pests that are emerging from them. Now, come autumn and winter, essentially, that's the time when all the Queensland fruit fly will be in the ground and they'll be pupating, they'll be dormant, waiting to emerge in spring. All you can do at that time, because they're safely in the ground, is if you have chickens, run them through the areas where the fallen fruit would have been, because that's where because they're not going to crawl too far. Literally, where the fruit falls, literally the Queensland fruit fly are going to be underneath there somewhere, not too far. So if you run chickens through that area and each of the fruit trees that you suspect they might be, they will clean up any of the pupae that have emerged. So if you incorporate all of those strategies in combination, and remember, if you're going to do the male pheromone traps, you have to do something else as well as the male pheromone traps. You can't use those on their own because one surviving male will actually undo it all. So I've given you lots and lots of measures. You can combine those in any way you like, in what's most convenient for you, and that will help get the problem under control. All you need to do is essentially control it for 1 or 2 seasons, like i.e. growing seasons, like i.e. years. You can control it the first year, you'll reduce the population. You do it the second year, you'll reduce them a lot more. Now, if you've got neighbours, you don't need too many growing fruit. You don't need too many of the male pheromone traps because they will work over a very large distance. But what you're going to need a lot of is a lot of the bait traps. If you want to go completely sustainable, try not to use the chemical sprays, but use the sugar protein, the fruit juice ones or the Cera traps. Now, you'll use a lot of those. They're not going to be 100% effective. They're moderately effective. But if you have the Cera traps or those orange juice soft drink bottle cloudy ammonia traps hanging in your trees, and you have all your fruits and veggies netted and your berries as well, because I really should stress all the things that they do infect. I probably haven't, because people will just forget thinking there's exceptions. Okay, they will do things like all the tropical fruit, any and every tropical fruit. I'm not going to name them all. Apples, apricots, avocados, bananas, blackberries, blueberries, boysenberries, Cape gooseberries, capsicums. Where are we? Cherries, chilies, all the citrus, fresh dates, eggplants, feijoas, figs, goji berries, fresh, not dried, grapefruit, grapes. Where are we? A lot of these are subtropical, kiwi fruit. Mangoes, which you can actually grow in Victoria, passion fruit, medlars, mulberries, nashi pears, nectarines, olives even, despite all the oil, they'll still get into those, peaches, pears, persimmons, plums, pomegranates. I mentioned prickly pears last time, things like pomelos, because they're citrus again, quince, even for people growing subtropicals, wax jambus, the water rose apples, will also get infected, so don't forget those. Where are we? Still go through the list, even strawberries, so be aware, look at your strawberry patches. Neglected strawberries will still have strawberries underneath, even if the snails have half eaten and you've got half rotting strawberries, they will still attract the Queensland fruit flies. Also things like tomatoes as well, and white sapotes. Think of anything that flowers and fruits, pumpkins, cucumbers, you name it, anything that's a fruit is fair game for them. So be on top of your game. They're less likely to infect veggies. With the veggies, they're fairly easy. You just throw a big net over the whole damn lot. Anything that needs pollination, well, all your fruit trees, you're not going to bother to net them while they're flowering because there's nothing to protect. It's only when the small fruits start forming, they're already pollinated, so there's no need to actually worry about pollination anymore. With your veggies, remember your tomatoes are essentially vibration pollinated. Anything wind blows them will pollinate them, so they're not too bad. Most of your other veggies, you can let once they're ripened. Once they're pollinated and the fruit starts forming, then cover them up. It's as simple as that. And for a lot of things, you can just give them a shake, or if you really want to get in there, you can get a little paintbrush and just dab from flower to flower. And that should help control it. Now, you do that for a year, then do that for a second year, worst case scenario, and you'll pretty well get on top of the problem. Now, this is incumbent on everyone playing their part. If you have a community and someone has got neglected fruit trees, well, it's going to cause problems. If your neighbor has a neglected fruit tree, well, I would just say get a piece of 30 by 30 piece of plywood or a little yellow cutting board, spray some of the chemical attractant, put it under some kind of cover and just hang it up near their trees. That'll take care of most of the things. You do what you can, but anything is better than nothing. And if I need to emphasize anything, it's with integrated pest management, every little control adds up. They all add up together, but just don't use the male ones on their own. Okay, we're almost time, but I'm happy to hang around much longer for questions. Shall we proceed with questions, Paul?
Yes, Angelo, and thank you very much for what was a very complete, really complete explanation. Who would have thought a little tiny fly could cover so much territory? Before I hand you the questions and answers, I'd just like to let people know some of the products that we have at a good cost. This is the promotional part, but we can show you the kind of lures and traps that we have available through Sustainable Macleod. Chris, would you like to do that? I'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself, if you would, Chris.
Sure. And hopefully everybody can see me.
Yes. Yes.
Some of you already know because you've ordered products. We've actually been getting in some products for the Queensland Fruit Fly. One of them is the Wild May product, but we've changed the trap from the Ripened trap to a Made in Australia trap. It just makes more sense, if we can, to use the Made in Australia trap. And you'll see there, I put it out last week and it's already got 2 little fruit flies in it, just in my citrus trees.
Chris, you need to take off your blur.
Oh.
We can't see the product very easily.
Just hold it near your face. That'll work either way.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll go video settings and turn off touch up my appearance.
Yeah, we all use that.
Okay. Whoops. How's that? Any better? Okay. So you can see the Wild May product. Or not really.
Yeah.
Hold it still. Yep. Yeah, you're right there.
That's it.
Now, with this product, we've put together the 2 products at a very good price of $18 for the pair. Individually, we also sell this trap for just $9. We'll also be selling just this, the 1 litre version, for $12. But if you've got your own bottle, so any refills, we can refill it at around $10 we'll be buying 5 litre bottles to do that, and it works out cheaper. So that's the Wild May product. Now, these traps, of course, you can use for protein traps or for sugar traps. And Angelo will provide some homemade recipes, and we've also been researching some homemade recipes, like even Vegemite, yeast-based traps do work. And I'll be using one even for cobblin moth. So I've got a problem with that. Now, last year, we actually did put 120 of these out in the community. So we can still reuse these. We can either put Wild May in them to make them into a wet trap, or you can get, we'll stock replacement wicks, which are about $8. However, you do need to replace them every 3 months.
And Chris, you want to say that that's the Echo Lure one that I was talking about, yeah?
Correct. So that's the Echo Lure. We will stock these for anybody that wants to buy the replacement. You can put wild May on it and attract male fruit flies, but without the Melficin on it, it won't kill them. So there's no point doing that unless you're going to put the poison as well. So it's probably better just to convert them to put wild May in them, or use it as a protein trap even. You could convert it. Now, later on in the year, we'll also have exclusion bags. Some of these will be freely distributed thanks to our grant. On our part of our collection, though, of data, we would like if everybody could register their traps, register catching of any fruit flies, and also register an estimate of how much fruit is destroyed. We want to try and collect a lot of information this year. Last year we had 75 reports. This year we want a lot more, and we're seeing it grow at about 1,000% a year. Queensland fruit fly. That's just based on the last couple of years. So we really think this year it's going to be very important to try and get on top of it. I don't know if you can you share my screen, Paul? And I'll just show you, we do have our...
that might be a bit tricky.
Tricky? Oh, anyway.
We can spice that into the recording.
We can spice it in. We've got a website called mocg.club, and that we're going to use for our data collection site. So it's not our main Sustainable Macleod site, but we'll put a link from there. And from that site, there's a simple form you can fill in to record, register your trap, report your trappings, and report fruit destroyed. So you people can actually help with this crowd data, sorry. And we'll be feeding that back to Banyule Council, and that should help us in what we do next year. So, but it's an important part if we can collect information. So that's about all from me.
So could I intervene?
Yep.
So if you go to sustainablemacleod.org, our website, we have a dedicated Queensland Fruit Fly page, which you can click on from the top bar. Already the data collection and the shop is on that page. So that's a really quick way of getting to everything. Plus our articles, is our video of the last workshop on there? And our blogs. So we're publishing blogs just before, say a week or two before you need to take an action. So the blogs are about action. They also appear on Facebook and in the newsletter. So when you see one of those, read it straight away, because if you leave it 2 weeks, you're going to be too late.
Right. We've got a number of questions that people have been putting up in the chat function. So what I'll do is I'll read those out and you can answer them if you're comfortable doing that.
Sounds great, yeah.
Okay, so the first question was, would freezing fruit be effective in killing larvae?
Yes, I've heard that that's one of the controls. That's one of the methods of freezing them. I can't remember how long you have to freeze them for, though. I think there was a specific time requirement for that.
I think it's 48 hours.
Is it 48 hours? Yeah. But you'd have to make sure that your fridge is really operating at a effectively at a very low temperature, freezing things. Because playing around with my own fridge at home, I remember finding certain things weren't lasting as long as they should. And once I got a proper little thermometer from eBay, ones they use in the sort of commercial fridges, I had to play around with a lot of the fridge to get it freezing optimally, especially an old fridge packed with a lot of stuff. It might not be freezing optimally. So you run the risk potentially of not freezing low enough, hard enough. And that's, so if you're going to do that, just get one of those. They're probably about $10 for a fridge thermometer. You can get them from kitchen supply places, and they will go there and they'll tell you how much below zero you're going to actually get real freezing. Because the idea is that what you want proper freezing, so they essentially will just get frozen and their cells will fracture. That's essentially what's going to be happening. So you just got to make sure your fridge is working well if you're going to do that.
Great. Second question, 2 people wanted to know the answer. Will Queensland Fruit Fly attack pomegranates?
Completely. Now, most things can't get through pomegranates because they're quite tough. But remember, sometimes your pomegranates will split because if they've been dry for a while, then you get a sudden rain, they will swell up and split, or maybe something will get into them, or maybe there's some kind of mechanical damage. The wind could blow them and they could hit a branch or a spike or something. It could be some of the peel could be damaged when it's quite young, and they will get into it that way. Normally, they could only get into very thin skinned soft fruits, but they rely on mechanical damage and other insect entry routes to actually, and they exploit those to get into everything. So they're very opportunistic.
Okay, so another question, a couple of questions on bagging that I'll roll together. So the first question was, when should people use exclusion bags? Is it as soon as the fruit is set?
Yeah, I would say to be safest because there's all the reports that as soon as the fruit is marble size, think of it like a cool bit size, they can even attack that. That's the earliest reports. So even though they say typically it's only vulnerable after it's about a third of its maximum size, they will go in as, depending on how desperate they are, as early as marble size. So I would think as soon as the fruit starts setting, once it looks like you've got pea-sized fruit, bag it up. Don't hold back, because there's nothing gained from waiting. The other thing which is advantageous, which I forgot to mention with the insect exclusion netting, is that it provides 20% shade. Just like the WP surround, the overhaul, whatever you want to call it, the calcine kaolin, which stops fruit sunburning, your fruit bags will also provide a bit of shelter to stop your fruit sunburning as well. So if we get sudden, really hot days in spring, you won't lose your fruit.
Okay, so somebody who is suggesting that putting individual bags on, for example, tomatoes, seems like a lot of work, wants to know if they can if they can net whole tomato plants. Completely.
If you're growing any of the vining tomatoes, the indeterminate types, like typically a lot of things like your Tommy Toes and Grosselisas and all of those things, you can do what the most productive thing to do. I've got a little article on my website, is do what the hydroponic growers do. You don't have to necessarily put an overhead support and put a string and wind it on the string, but what you do is you prune all the sideways branches, not the leaves, but the branches, because the leaves will come off the main stem, and where the leaves come off, you'll have the fruit coming off there. But then you also have another extra stem, which will then have its own leaves. You can prune those off. There's no point having those. That will allow you to have your tomatoes literally almost, 50 centimetres apart, or not even. I put about 3 of them into one of those plastic grow tubs. You can probably even have them about 30 centimetres or less apart. Now, with the bits that you chop off, throw them in a bucket of water, they'll root, you'll end up with new tomatoes plants. Now, if your tomato plants are growing flat, they'll be like an aspalaeus. All you need to do is take a thin piece of net of the insect exclusion net, drape it over and around, and that will suffice. You don't need to cover these big extensive branching trees. Also, if you're growing your tomatoes or putting on a fence, you just put up like a curtain. I normally will, if you've just got a regular wooden fence, you can tie a wire over the top, get clothes pegs, and just drape it like a sheet. And that will fall over the tomatoes, and that will work just fine. As long as they're generally covered, it's sufficient. Your bush type tomatoes will take a square section just thrown over them, and that's sufficient. Don't worry about tiny little gaps. They won't get through those.
Right. So somebody was also interested in using kaolin clay and wanted to know what proportions. I think you said 250 mil.
Yeah, it was. If I remember off the top of my head, it was 100 grams into half a litre. Sorry, 100 mil.
Yep.
Because most people aren't going to sit there with a scale, so I did that already for you. So 100 mil of calcined kaolin into half a litre of water. Keep on shaking up, agitating while you're spray just to get to the point of runoff, and it'll look weird for a while, but once it'll set, it won't wash off very easily. You normally don't have to do a repeat spray. If you have to do a repeat spray, do it at half that concentration. So put 50 mil into half a litre of water, and that will then be sufficient for a recover.
Right. Now, another question: if the ground underneath where the fruit fly larvae have fallen, if that's covered with plants and so on, will that inhibit them from turning into pupae in the soil?
No, if it's what it'll do is it'll increase the chances of them being eaten, though, because if you have mulch and ground cover plants, you're going to have a little ecosystem where all the predatory insects are going to be living, eating anything that sort of ventures into that ground. So they're more likely to get eaten if you have ground cover there. If you just have loose soil, well, nothing lives in there except things that will burrow into the soil, soil pests. So if you just got clean, loose soil there, essentially that's just an open invitation for the pests to go in, and there'll be nothing in there to essentially eat them. So that's not a good idea unless you're running chickens through there, which would be the only justification for that. So either have a good mulch layer with lots of ground cover plants over that, or have it bare and have chickens through it, one or the other, but not neither option, because that'll be a very bad option.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're getting close to the end of the questions, I think, and it's already gone a little bit over the time we'd scheduled, and thank you for being...
No problem.
Thank you for being so generous. So a couple more questions. Can you use plastic milk bottles for the orange juice traps?
Yes, I don't see any reason. They're a little bit whitish, aren't they?
Mm.
You probably don't want anything that looks whitish. Just trying to think. They're not quite clear, but not quite white. What I would recommend, because what you were talking about, people putting up the information, you've got me really thinking. It'll be good if people try different bait formulations and measure the success of one against the other in the same. If you're in the same property and you put all your bait traps all to the northern side of the trees, so they're all equally exposed, and you can see whether Vegemite works as well as the the orange juice wheelie bin cleaner, which might work as well as some of the other formulations. Similarly, you can try different bottles. The almost milky color of a milk carton might be a deterrent, but it might not. The only way to determine that is to essentially do it scientifically. Put 2 of the milk bottles at least and 2 of the clear soft drink bottles, bait them with exactly the same thing and just see if one catches more than the other. The only drawback I can see with using a larger milk carton is because it's got a wider base, you're going to need a lot more liquid to have the same depth. So it's not going to be as economical on the liquid. And because if you're hanging it from the branches, it'll be a lot heavier. So if you have, say, 5 centimeters of the, say, whatever trap liquid you got at the bottom, you'll be using about 4 times as much as a soft drink bottle, just judging by the size of the bases. So just be mindful of that. Because you want to sort of, I'm a permaculture guy, so we like to do things as sustainably as possible and use the minimal amount of resources. So the simplest way to minimize resources is you have a narrower container.
Right. And as far as I can see, the final question for now, at least, somebody's asking if it's possible to pick the fruit when it's green and ripen on the inside. Will that help you prevent fruit fly attack?
Okay, some fruit will ripen off the vine, some fruit won't. For example, the classic example is like a pumpkin. Unless the stem is actually browned off, your pumpkins won't ripen off the vine. So if you want, actually, that's actually a very good question, because One of the strategies you can use is to use smaller growing or dwarf versions of your plants. They're going to ripen much, much quicker. So if you think of a cherry tomato, that's got a turnover of about a week from the time it emerges to the time it's ready to harvest versus, some, beefsteak or gross leaf, which is going to take weeks and weeks to ripen. It's going to be larger and present for a lot longer, therefore much more vulnerable. But it would depend on what you're really harvesting. Some things can ripen, but the problem is we have the issue of nutrient density and also sugar development. If you're wondering why your supermarket apples taste absolutely horrible, is for that reason. They pick them rock hard because they put them in a big tip truck. And if they're soft, they will all crush. So they do is you pick them rock hard and that's how they get them uniform size as well. And then they essentially put them into cold storage for a few months. Then when it's time to ripen them, they will put them in a big gas chamber, run ethylene gas through it and artificially ripens them. The problem is they haven't been on the tree or the plant long enough to develop all the sugars or all the flavor, all the nutrients. So you end up with a low nutrient density fruit. So I think I read some research saying that an apple from the supermarket now, to get the equivalent sort of an apple you'll buy from the greengrocer 20 years ago, you need 4 of them at least. So there's no point sacrificing nutrient density or flavor because the apples, the reason why they're tasteless and not worth eating is because they're not let to ripen their natural sugars. Remember, the photosynthesis has to essentially push all the sugars into the fruit, and potassium is important in translocating sugars from source of photosynthesis to fruit. So when things are fruiting, if you want them to actually, if you want them to develop in the optimum time, make sure you do use a form or unless you're using a balanced fertilizer. If you're just using like chicken manure or cow manure or blood and bone or whatever it might be, make sure you supplement with either potash, potassium sulfate, or you use something like seaweed extract, sea salt, because you need both nitrogen and phosphorus, which manures contain, or blood and bone contains, but you need the potassium as well because it's important in both flowering, fruiting, and fruit retention, fruit development. So make sure you use the potash. That way you can ripen your fruit at the optimum. Adding more will just mess things up. I've just put an article on that recently. Adding more will really mess things up. Don't overdo it. Or if you're using something like Dynamic Lifter Palisol or the Grow Better Organic Fertilizer, they're already balanced. Make sure you've got your potassium in there so you're getting optimum ripening times, and keep them protected. Some things will ripen off the vine. Some things will be absolutely disgusting or won't work at all. So you have to do that on a fruit by fruit basis.
Great. Look, thanks, Angelo. It's come up to 3:45, which I think is a reasonable time for us to wrap up the session.
No problem.
And I've noticed that there are some people who have other things they need to do, obviously.
Yep.
Angelo, look, first of all, I'd like to thank you enormously for you sharing all your experience and your knowledge about this topic. If people have more questions, is there a way that they can get answers to that from you?
Yes, they can either contact me on my website or directly on my email. It's just deep_green@optusnet.com.au. So, because I'm Deep Green Permaculture, so the email is deep and then _green@optusnet.com.au. And if there's some really awesome questions, I will also then add them to my article or post up another article about that too, so to share the knowledge. And I'm also keen to keep in touch so we can figure out what homemade baits work the best, because that will be something to get out into the community and get that knowledge out as much as possible, because once we can do that, we can have people putting a maximum number of those bait traps out in there as well, and that way it'll help it get under control, because it's essentially a community effort, and what you guys are doing are great. And I'll probably get in touch with you about those bottles as well, because those yellow capped bottles can be used for the bait traps as well, and they work very efficiently.
Right. Look, Angelo, thanks very much again. What I'm seeing in the chat function here is people signing off and thanking you particularly, and us as well, very much for the session. It's been a fantastic session. I'd like everybody to thank you. They can they can applaud.
Thanks, everyone. I can see you.
Wave. And look, thank you everybody for joining our session. We really appreciate that people take this seriously because, you know, clearly like us, you're very committed to looking after your fruit and your neighbour's fruit in the best possible way. So thank you all and farewell.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. Farewell, everyone.